picture the scenario, right? And pay really close attention to the actual physical sensations it brings up for you.
Oh, this can be relatable.
Yeah, unfortunately. So it's a Tuesday night. You're sitting on your couch watching some show you're, only half paying attention to.
Right.
Because your real focus is on your phone. It's just sitting there on the coffee table. And you sent a text to the person you've been dating for a few months.
Just a casual text.
Yeah, nothing heavy, just a simple everyday message. But that was 3 hours ago. And, well, nothing. Crickets.
The dreaded silence.
Exactly. Now, if you're like a lot of people, a very specific physical cascade is starting to happen in your body right now.
Oh, yeah.
Your chest might get like a little tight, your breathing becomes shallower, you feel that sudden drop in your stomach.
Like you're on a roller coaster.
Yes. And your mind just starts racing through this whole Rolodex of terrible possibilities. Like, did I say something wrong? Are they losing interest?
Should I double text?
Right. Should I text again? Or should I pretend I just totally don't care? Or, maybe you fall into a completely different camp.
The other side of the coin.
Exactly. Maybe someone is texting you a little too much, asking for a bit too much closeness. And your immediate physical reaction is this intense feeling of being suffocated.
Like you need to escape.
Yeah. Your shoulders tense up. You want to, throw your phone in a river, move to a cabin in the woods, and just never speak to another human being again.
We usually just laugh these things off.
Right. Like, they're just personality quirks.
Exactly. We blame, the chaotic landscape of modern dating.
Oh, totally. We say things like, well, I just have relationship anxiety, or I'm just fiercely independent.
But the reality is so much deeper than that. The way you bond with romantic partners, and specifically the way you panic when that bond feels threatened, it's not just some psychological glitch.
No.
It's an ancient, hardwired survival mechanism. And it is playing out in your biology in real time.
Okay, so let's really unpack this because that is wild. The goal for this deep dive into the source material is to completely shift the perspective on love. We're moving away from seeing it as this purely emotional concept.
Right. Getting away from the poetry.
Exactly. We're going to look at it as a measurable biological survival skill.
I love that framing.
Thanks. So we'll guide you through the evolutionary biology and the brain chemistry of adult attachment styles. But most importantly, we are going to extract practical advice from all this data.
Because the data is useless if you can't apply it.
Preach. So by the end of this, you'll be able to do two things. First, identify your personal stress triggers in relationships. And second, practice daily mentalization techniques to actively rewire your own attachment style.
We have a really incredible stack of sources to go through today.
Oh, it's massive.
It is. We're looking at evolutionary psychology, advanced neurobiology, and physiological studies. We're drawing on major research by scholars like Simpson, Rolls, Turtinen, and Jiteau.
And Sagone, right. For the single life stuff.
Yes, Sagone as well. It covers everything from the physiological toll of relationship stress to this really hopeful concept of earned security.
Okay, so to make sense of the adult brain freaking out over an unanswered text message, we have to go way, way back.
Back to the beginning.
Right, because the attachment behavioral system, it didn't evolve so we could, write love songs or enjoy long walks on the beach.
Definitely not.
It evolved via natural selection for one highly specific, absolutely ruthless purpose, keeping highly vulnerable infants alive in a very dangerous environment.
That's the core of it. When we look at human evolutionary history, human infants are uniquely altricial.
Altricial. Which means what exactly?
It's a biological term. It just means they are born in an incredibly undeveloped state compared to other mammals.
Right, because, you look at a baby horse.
A baby horse can walk within hours of being born.
It's crazy.
It is. But a human infant, they can't walk, they can't hunt, they can't defend themselves, they can't even regulate their own body temperature for a significant period after birth.
And this all goes back to the evolutionary trade-off between walking upright and having massive brains, right?
Yes, exactly.
Because bipedalism narrowed the birth canal. So human babies literally have to be born essentially half-baked, or else their heads would be way too big to pass through.
That is the leading evolutionary theory, yes. It's called the obstetrical dilemma.
The obstetrical dilemma, wow.
And because they're born so helpless, if they're left alone even for a very short period in an ancestral environment, they just do not survive.
They succumb to predators. Or just the cold.
Exactly. So natural selection had to solve this massive problem. How do you ensure that this totally helpless creature stays close to a protective adult.
And the solution was the attachment system.
Bingo. It's an innate biological thermostat. It's designed to motivate a vulnerable infant to seek physical and emotional proximity to a caregiver whenever they face any kind of distress.
So it operates literally like a thermostat in your house.
Very much so.
Like if the temperature drops too much, the heat automatically kicks on. So if an infant perceives a threat, like a loud noise or hunger or just being alone, the attachment system kicks on. It triggers crying or reaching out.
Yes. And then, when a caregiver responds by holding them, that proximity-seeking behavior physically reduces the fear.
It's not just emotional comfort.
No, it is physiological. The physical contact literally regulates the infant's nervous system.
Yeah.
It lowers their heart rate. It stops the release of stress hormones.
Okay, so I follow the logic there for an infant. It makes total sense. Like, get close to the big person so the tiger doesn't eat me.
Keep me warm, keep me safe.
Right, it's a physical survival mechanism. But, I mean, the leap we need to make here is how a survival mechanism for a helpless baby translates to, say, a 30-something adult trying to navigate modern dating.
Well, the mechanism translates because those early childhood experiences, they don't just fade away as our brains mature.
They don't just disappear.
No, they crystallize. You have to remember, our brains are basically prediction machines. So as we transition from infancy into toddlerhood, the repetitive interactions we have with our primary caregivers start to shape what developmental psychologists call working models.
Working models.
Yes. You can think of them as deeply ingrained subconscious if-then algorithms.
Oh, if-then algorithms, like the basic logic used in computer programming.
Very much like that, yeah. The developing brain is essentially writing the code for how the world works based on the data it's receiving at the time.
Okay, so give me an example of the code.
Sure. If the infant cries and the caregiver consistently comes and offers comfort, the brain writes a secure algorithm.
Which would be something like, if I express a need, then someone will reliably meet it.
Exactly. Or, if I am vulnerable, then I am safe.
That's the secure blueprint. But what if the data is different? What if the caregiver is, inconsistent or dismissive or maybe just entirely absent?
Then the brain writes a very different algorithm to survive that specific environment.
It adapts.
Right. It might write, if I express a need, then I will be rejected.
Oh.
Or, if I show vulnerability, then I will be ignored. And here is the profound implication. These subconscious algorithms dictate how you expect future partners to respond to your needs.
Even decades later.
Especially when you're under stress. They become the foundational blueprint for how we navigate the entire adult interpersonal world.
That is so wild. So you are basically attempting to navigate these highly complex adult emotional dynamics using a map that was drawn by a toddler in survival mode.
That is exactly what is happening.
Oh, wait, let me pause right there and push back on the evolutionary logic of this.
Okay, go for it.
Because if proximity is the absolute key to survival, like if seeking comfort is what keeps you alive, why would natural selection ever allow for an algorithm that says, if I'm stressed, I should hide my needs and pull away?
You're talking about the avoidant attachment style.
Yeah. Deactivating your needs and distancing yourself from your tribe just seems like a terrible way for an ancient human infant to survive. How does that even make evolutionary sense?
It's a really crucial question. And honestly, it seems counterintuitive until you look at the concept of conditional adaptation.
Conditional adaptation.
Right. Natural selection doesn't just create one perfect, rigid system. It creates a system that can adapt to different environmental realities.
Okay, so give me a scenario.
Let's imagine an ancestral environment where resources are incredibly scarce.
Like a famine.
A famine. Or maybe the primary caregiver is just highly stressed, dealing with their own immediate survival threats.
Right, an environment where the caregiver just does not have the emotional or physical bandwidth to deal with a crying infant.
Exactly. In that specific, high-stress environment, an infant who constantly cries, demands attention, and hyperactivates their attachment system might actually be perceived as a burden.
Oh, wow.
They might irritate the caregiver to the point of being abandoned, and abandonment means certain death.
So the infant's brain realizes that being needy is actually dangerous in this specific scenario.
Yes. The infant's brain makes a brilliant but truly tragic calculation. It decides the only way to maintain physical proximity to this stressed caregiver is to demand absolutely nothing emotionally.
So they just shut it down.
They deactivate their attachment system. They suppress their distress. They stay quiet and undemanding.
It should just fly under the radar.
Right. It ensures they get just enough physical protection to not die, while avoiding the rejection that would come from being too needy.
I mean, that makes profound biological sense, even if it is heartbreaking.
It is.
The brain is just doing whatever it takes to adapt to the specific ecosystem it was born into. It writes the code that works for that house.
Exactly.
But then, 20 years later, that person is living in a completely different environment. They're dating a partner who actually wants to be close to them. But that same old code is running in the background.
Running silently.
Right. So the partner says, hey, tell me what you are feeling. And the person's brain just flashes this massive red warning sign that says, danger. If you express a need, you will be abandoned. Shut down all systems.
You nailed it. The software is totally outdated for the current environment.
It's like running Windows 95 on a brand new supercomputer.
That's a great analogy. And to understand how deeply entrenched this software really is, we have to recognize that these aren't just abstract thoughts.
Right.
They aren't just memories floating around in the ether. These repetitive early experiences literally alter the physical hardware of your brain as it develops.
The psychological becomes biological.
Precisely. So, to understand how we connect as adults, we really need to look under the hood at the neurobiology of connection.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics of that hardware, because this is where the research just blew my mind. We are moving from evolutionary theory into tangible physical brain chemistry here.
Yes, the imaging studies.
Right. There are these fascinating studies, specifically the work by Turtinen and colleagues, where researchers have looked at adult attachment systems in vivo.
Meaning in living human beings.
Right. They're looking at living brains to see what secure attachment physically looks like on a chemical level.
And the methodology of that research is just remarkable.
How do they do it?
They used positron emission tomography, or PET scans.
Okay.
And they use these scans to measure the exact chemical density and receptor availability in the brains of adults with different attachment styles.
And they were looking for something really specific, right?
Yes, they focused specifically on the endogenous opioid system.
Okay, let's clarify that. Because when most people hear the word opioid, they immediately think of prescription painkillers or morphine or, the tragic addiction crisis.
Of course. That's what we call exogenous opioids. Exogenous meaning substances introduced from outside the body.
But endogenous means?
Originating from within. Your brain evolved to produce its own natural opioids long before modern medicine ever existed.
Like endorphins.
Exactly. Endorphins and kephalins, these are natural peptides. And they bind to specialized receptors in the brain, the most prominent being the mu-opioid receptors.
Okay, so how does that binding process actually work? Like, what is happening at the cellular level when I hug someone I love?
You can think of the mu-opioid receptor as a highly specific biological lock. It sits on the outside of a neuron.
Okay, a lock.
And the endogenous opioid is the key.
Got it.
When your body experiences pain or stress or certain types of social pleasure, the brain releases these opioid keys.
They just flood the system.
They float across the synapses, they find those mu-opioid locks, and they insert themselves.
And what happens when the key turns?
When that binding occurs, it triggers a chemical cascade inside the neuron that essentially turns down the volume on pain signals.
Wow.
And it induces this profound sense of calm, safety, and soothing.
Wait, let me ask about dopamine. Because we always hear about dopamine when we talk about brain chemistry and relationships and dating apps.
Right, the dopamine hit.
Yeah. So how is this opioid system different from the dopamine system?
That is a really important distinction. Dopamine is primarily the molecule of seeking, wanting, and motivation.
Okay.
It drives you to pursue a reward. It is what makes you swipe on a dating app or crave a text back.
It's the chase.
Exactly. The opioid system, on the other hand, is the molecule of liking, soothing, and satiation.
So dopamine is the anticipation of the meal.
And opioids are the warm, heavy satisfaction after you have eaten it.
That makes so much sense.
In the context of relationships, dopamine drives the initial pursuit, but the endogenous opioid system is what makes long-term, stable attachment feel safe and rewarding.
Which brings us back to the findings of the Turtinen PE scans. What did they actually see when they compared the brains of securely attached adults to insecurely attached adults?
The findings reveal a physical divergence in the brain's architecture.
A physical difference?
Yes. The research demonstrated that securely attached adults have significantly higher mu-opioid receptor availability.
They have more locks.
Exactly. They have more locks in critical emotion-regulating regions of the brain.
Which regions are we talking about?
Areas like the hippocampus, which is deeply involved in forming memories and learning context.
Okay.
The amygdala, which acts as the brain's primary threat detection center, and fear processor.
The panic button.
Yes, the panic button. And the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for complex decision-making, logic, and top-down emotional regulation.
So if you have a secure attachment style, meaning your early childhood environment taught you that connection is safe, your brain literally built more locks to receive these natural painkillers.
Yes,
And it built them in the exact regions that manage fear and memory.
that's right.
What is the practical result of that for a person just going about their daily life?
It means that securely attached individuals experience greater endogenous pain relief and what neuroscientists call social euphoria.
Social euphoria. I love that term.
When they connect with others, they literally feel it more.
Yeah.
Because their brain has a high density of these receptors, interpersonal trust is biologically reinforcing.
So it feels physically good to trust people.
Very much so. When a securely attached person interacts socially, has a deep conversation, or shares physical affection, their brain releases opioids, and their abundant receptors catch them efficiently.
They get a massive chemical reward. The researchers also mentioned that this robust opioid response protects against psychiatric morbidity, which sounds intense. What does that mean in practical terms?
Psychiatric morbidity just refers to the statistical risk of developing clinical mental health conditions.
Like anxiety or depression.
Particularly anxiety disorders and major depression, yes. The dense, efficient mu-opioid system in securely attached individuals acts as a biological shield.
Shield.
Yes. It means their baseline neurochemistry is naturally better at soothing their nervous system after a stressor.
So they bounce back faster.
Right. Which prevents the chronic wear and tear that often leads to clinical anxiety or depression.
Let's ground this in a real-world example so it's super clear. Imagine two different people going to the exact same social gathering. Let's say a dinner party with some acquaintances.
Okay, good scenario.
One person has the secure attachment style with high mu-opioid receptor density. The other has an insecure attachment style, meaning fewer available receptors. For the securely attached person, as they engage in conversation, laugh, share a meal, their brain is releasing those natural opioids.
And because they have so many available receptors, their brain soaks it all up.
They experience that social euphoria.
Yes, they leave the party feeling warm, relaxed, and deeply grounded.
But for the insecurely attached person,
The physiological experience of that exact same party is fundamentally different.
even if they had the exact same conversation.
Exactly. Their brain might even release a similar amount of natural opioids. But because their receptor availability is lower, because their early environment didn't incentivize building those specific neural pathways, that chemical reward is biologically muted.
The keys are floating around, but there just aren't enough locks to catch them.
Precisely. Their brain simply isn't processing the social connection with the same level of pain relief and euphoria.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. It's like securely attached people have a fully stocked, highly efficient internal emotional pharmacy.
I like that.
And this pharmacy actively dispenses painkillers and soothing agents during social interactions. But for the insecurely attached folks, the medicine cabinet is locked. Or at least the hinges are severely rusted.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. And the implications become even more profound when we shift from positive social interactions to negative ones.
Right. What happens during a fight?
Think about what happens when you experience emotional pain. A rejection, a harsh criticism from a partner, a misunderstanding over a text.
Okay.
The securely attached person's internal pharmacy immediately deploys those endogenous opioids to soothe the emotional sting in the amygdala.
It quiets the panic button.
Yes. And this biological soothing allows their prefrontal cortex, the logic center, to stay online.
So they remain calm. They can actually give their partner the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly. They can rationally regulate their reaction.
But the insecurely attached person doesn't get that same biological intervention.
No, they don't. The pain stays raw.
The amygdala stays highly activated because there isn't enough opioid activity to quiet it down.
And so the prefrontal cortex gets totally overwhelmed. Logic goes right out the window.
And they react entirely from a place of raw survival panic.
Exactly. The lack of that biological shield leaves them incredibly vulnerable to the physical toll of relationship stress.
Which is the perfect pivot to our next major area of focus. If secure attachment provides a biological shield, what is the actual physical mechanism of harm when that shield is missing?
Right.
When the algorithms predict abandonment and the internal pharmacy can't soothe the fear, what happens to the human body?
To understand the physical toll, we need to introduce a concept used heavily in psychology and medicine called a diathesis.
A diathesis, let's define that.
A diathesis is an underlying biological or psychological vulnerability. It's a predisposition to a certain condition.
Okay.
The research by psychologists like Simpson and Rolls categorizes insecure attachment specifically as a diathesis for stress.
It's a hidden vulnerability. So I was thinking about this like having a trick knee.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. Most of the time when you are just walking on flat ground, your knee is fine. You don't even think about it.
You feel totally healthy.
But the moment you have to run up a steep hill or carry a heavy load, that underlying vulnerability gives out, and the pain is excruciating.
A trick knee is a perfect way to think about it. Insecure attachment acts like a hidden tripwire in your nervous system.
Okay.
When you are single, or when a relationship is in the easy honeymoon phase, the tripwire is quiet.
Flat ground.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the moment a stressful event occurs, a conflict, a perceived rejection, an ambiguous text message, that underlying diathesis is triggered.
The tripwire gets crossed.
Yes. And when it is triggered, it initiates a massive maladaptive cascade of physiological and emotional responses.
So if someone listening wants to figure out where their own tripwire is, they need to know what to look for.
Right. They need to identify their specific triggers.
The psychological literature broadly divides these insecure stress responses into two main behavioral camps, right?
Yes. Hyperactivation, which corresponds to the anxious attachment style, and deactivation, which corresponds to the avoidant attachment style.
Let's trace the mechanics of both, starting with hyperactivation.
Okay. If you possess an anxiously attached blueprint, your early if-and algorithm tells you that the people you rely on are likely to disappear.
Unless you do something about it.
Right. Unless you actively keep their attention. Your baseline assumption is that you are unworthy of consistent care.
So when a threat appears,
your attachment system doesn't just turn on, it hyperactivates. You enter a state of acute rumination.
Rumination being the inability to stop obsessively thinking about the threat. Like your brain gets stuck in a loop.
Yes. And you demand reassurance to quiet that loop.
What does that look like in practice?
We might send a barrage of text messages. You might constantly ask, "Are you mad at me? Do you still love me?"
Or picking a fight out of nowhere.
Yes. You might even unconsciously pick a fight or create drama just to force an emotional interaction with your partner.
Because, from the perspective of an anxiously attached brain in a state of panic, even negative attention is better than no attention.
Exactly.
Negative attention is proof that the person is still physically there. It proves proximity.
Precisely. And the research highlights a really difficult dynamic for highly anxious individuals.
What's that?
They are often remarkably perceptive, but in a way that actively harms them.
Wait, perceptive?
Yes. During relationship conflicts, anxious individuals don't just imagine threats. They often accurately infer relationship-threatening thoughts from their partners.
Accurately. So they aren't just projecting their own insecurities. They're actually reading the room correctly.
Often, yes. They are hypervigilant.
Yeah.
Because their survival has historically depended on monitoring the emotional state of an inconsistent caregiver, they are highly attuned.
Like a radar system.
Exactly. Attuned to micro-expressions, subtle shifts in tone, or slight physical withdrawals.
So if a partner sighs quietly or looks away for a second,
The anxious person accurately picks up on the partner's internal frustration or their sudden desire for space.
but the problem isn't the accuracy of the perception, right? It's the reaction to it.
Exactly.
Because a securely attached person might notice their partner is frustrated, give them a few hours of space, and assume things will be totally fine.
They trust the bond.
Right. But the anxiously attached person notices the frustration, assumes it means an impending breakup, and pursues the partner relentlessly to fix it immediately.
Which is the tragedy of the hyperactivating strategy. By accurately perceiving the need for space and reacting by clinging tighter, they overwhelm the partner.
They literally push the partner away.
Yes, they create a self-fulfilling prophecy that confirms their deepest fear of abandonment.
Wow. Okay, let's look at the other side of the spectrum. Deactivation, the hallmark of the avoidant attachment style.
Right.
So if this is your algorithm, your early environment taught you that seeking comfort is either useless because no one responds or dangerous because you will be punished for being needy. So what does the tripwire look like for an avoidant person?
When an avoidant individual encounters stress, and this is key, it could be stress originating from the relationship itself, or external stress like losing a job or facing a health crisis, they actively deactivate their attachment system.
They forcefully suppress the urge to seek proximity.
Yes, they pull away.
What does that suppression actually look like in their behavior?
It looks like emotional and physical distancing. They might physically leave the house during an argument.
It's a classic walkout.
Yes. They might shut down emotionally, refusing to speak or process feelings.
A silent treatment.
They might bury themselves in work or hobbies just to avoid intimacy. They seek significantly less comfort from their partners when they're suffering.
And what about when their partner is suffering?
Crucially, they offer significantly less support in return when their partner is the one experiencing stress.
It's an active suppression effort. It takes energy to ignore your own distress.
It does.
Their internal software is screaming, closeness equals pain. Relying on someone else is a trap. Isolate to survive.
That's the script.
And we really need to emphasize here that whether you are hyperactivating or deactivating, this is not just an emotional mood swing.
No, not at all.
The physiological cascade that accompanies these responses is severe. The research by scholars like Pietromonaco and Powers dives deeply into the physiological stress processes related to attachment.
It's a huge area of study.
This damage is not just in your head, it is literally in your bloodstream.
The biological cascade is intense.
Oh.
When that attachment diathesis is triggered, it essentially tells the brain that your physical survival is at risk.
Even if you're just sitting in your living room.
Exactly. It activates the body's primary stress management networks.
Yeah.
And the most significant of these is the HPA axis.
The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis.
Yes.
Let's trace that cascade step by step so we understand exactly how a psychological fear turns into a physical reality. It starts in the brain, right?
Yes. The amygdala detects the relationship threat, the unanswered text, the perceived rejection.
Okay.
It sends a distress signal to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is a command center in the brain.
And what does it do?
It releases a hormone called corticotropin-releasing hormone, or CRH. This CRH travels a short distance to the pituitary gland.
The pituitary gland sits right at the base of the brain, and it acts like a master switchboard for the endocrine system.
Exactly. When the pituitary receives the CRH, it releases adrenocorticotropic hormone, or ACTH, directly into the bloodstream.
Okay, we're in the blood now.
Yes. This ACTH travels down through your body to your adrenal glands, which sit right on top of your kidneys.
And the adrenals go to work.
The adrenal cortex receives the signal and begins pumping cortisol into your system.
Cortisol, the infamous stress hormone. What is cortisol actually doing to our organs when it floods the system like that?
Well, cortisol's primary job is to mobilize massive amounts of energy so you can survive a physical threat. It dumps glucose into your bloodstream so your muscles have fuel to fight or run away.
But to do this efficiently, it has to shut other things down, right?
Yes. It simultaneously suppresses all bodily functions that are not immediately necessary for short-term survival.
Like what?
It suppresses your digestive system, it suppresses your reproductive system, and most importantly, it severely suppresses your immune system.
Because if a predator is chasing you, your body does not care if you have a cold or if you're digesting a sandwich.
Exactly.
It redirects all resources to your leg muscles and your lungs.
That is the evolutionary design. And in addition to the HPA axis, your brain also triggers the sympathetic adrenal medullary system.
Which does what?
It dumps epinephrine and norepinephrine adrenaline into the bloodstream.
Oh, wow.
This spikes your heart rate, increases your blood pressure, and accelerates your breathing.
This is why your chest gets tight when the text doesn't come back. Your body is literally preparing to sprint away from a physical predator.
Yes.
But you aren't sprinting. You were just sitting on a couch. So the glucose and the cortisol have nowhere to go.
And this is where the real health crisis begins. Acute stress, like a brief spike in cortisol that resolves quickly, is perfectly healthy.
It keeps us alive.
But insecure attachment creates chronic stress. If you are constantly hyperactivating or deactivating, your HPA axis is constantly firing.
Just constantly dripping cortisol into your veins.
Yes. And living in a state of chronic HPA axis activation and elevated cortisol is devastating for long-term health.
What happens over time?
It leads to persistent systemic inflammation. It wears down the cardiovascular system, significantly increasing the risk of hypertension and heart disease.
Oh, man.
It degrades the immune system, making you more susceptible to infections and slowing down wound healing. It even disrupts sleep architecture and leads to chronic fatigue.
The literal, measurable toll on your physical health is just staggering. Your immune response is being actively compromised by the way you process relationship insecurity.
It is a biological reality.
Now, hearing all of this, a very logical conclusion might form in the listener's mind.
I can guess what it is.
Right. They might think, If dating triggers my HPA axis, floods my veins with cortisol, suppresses my immune system, and generally just makes me miserable, the solution is obvious. I'm opting out.
Just walk away from the table.
Exactly. I am going to stay single forever.
Ah.
If I never engage in a romantic relationship, the tripwire never gets crossed, and my health is safe.
It is an incredibly common coping mechanism, the opt-out strategy. If the game causes pain, stop playing the game.
Right.
And it is vital that we address the demographic of people who choose to be single or are single by circumstance, because the research reveals a really fascinating nuance here.
Does an insecure attachment style mean you literally need a romantic relationship to be psychologically healthy?
Or can you just bypass the entire attachment system by being alone?
The research by Hazan and colleagues tackles this exact question.
They looked at the complex association between attachment styles, psychological well-being, and whether or not someone is currently in a relationship.
Give us the broad context first.
To give the broad context, stable, highly functional close relationships generally act as a protective factor for long-term emotional stability and physical health for the majority of people.
Right, because humans are deeply social primates.
We are. But Sagon's research demonstrates that if you are single, your underlying internal attachment style plays a massive dictating role in your day-to-day happiness and psychological functioning.
Right, because just because you uninstall the dating app doesn't mean you uninstall the algorithm in your brain.
Exactly. The software is still running in the background, even if you do not have a primary romantic partner to project it onto.
So how does an anxious attachment style manifest when someone is completely single?
The Sagon research clearly shows that for single people, psychological well-being is heavily and negatively impacted by a high need for external approval.
External approval.
Yes, this need for constant external validation is the absolute hallmark of anxious attachment.
Yeah.
If your core psychological architecture requires someone else's approval to feel safe and worthy, being single is not going to feel like peaceful independence.
It's going to feel like torture.
It is going to feel like a chronic, low-grade state of threat.
Because the anxious brain is constantly scanning for the comfort it assumes it lacks.
Yes.
If there is no partner to text, the brain might seek that validation through friendships, right? Becoming overly demanding or hyper-vigilant of friends' moods.
Or it might seek it through social media.
Oh, of course. Desperately chasing likes and engagement to get a fleeting hit of dopamine just because the opioid system is starved.
Exactly. The lack of a romantic partner does not turn off the anxiety. It merely leaves the anxiety frantically searching for a new target.
So the single life becomes exhausting because the individual is still constantly hustling for worthiness.
That's a great way to put it.
But the study also looked at single individuals who possess a secure attachment style. And the contrast is night and day.
It truly is. Sagon's research found that single individuals who maintain an attachment style, characterized by confidence, which is the specific metric they use to measure secure attachment, maintain exceptionally high levels of psychological well-being.
They don't just survive being single.
No, they thrive.
Their internal pharmacy is fully stocked. They don't need a romantic partner to unlock the medicine cabinet. They can generate a sense of safety and meaning completely internally.
This is a vital scientific pushback against a deeply entrenched cultural narrative.
Society constantly tells single people they need to find someone, right?
Exactly, either explicitly through media or implicitly through family expectations. You have to find someone to be truly happy, complete, or biologically settled.
There is an immense, sometimes suffocating cultural pressure to partner up.
But the neurobiology and the psychological data suggest that cultural narrative has the goal entirely wrong.
What's the real goal?
The actual biological goal is not necessarily to find a partner. The goal is to find internal attachment security.
That is such a crucial reframing. It takes so much pressure off.
It really does.
If your core algorithm is secure, if you believe you are worthy and you trust that the world is generally a safe place, you can thrive beautifully outside the confines of a traditional romantic relationship.
You can derive profound emotional satiation and opioid release from deep friendships, engagement with your community, passionate hobbies.
And even just quiet solitude.
The secure single person experiences solitude as restorative, whereas the insecure single person experiences it as isolating.
The difference is entirely in the underlying attachment code.
Completely.
This reframing shifts the internal monologue from, I need to find a person to fix my anxiety, to, I need to work on my internal security, and whether a romantic partner comes along or not, my nervous system will be stable.
Yes.
But that leads us directly to the most critical question of this entire deep dive.
Okay, lay on me.
If someone is listening to this right now, whether they are single or struggling in a relationship, and they are having a massive moment of realization.
A light bulb moment.
Right. If they are saying, wow, I definitely have an insecure algorithm, I hyperactivate, I deactivate, my HPA axis is constantly flooded with cortisol, I need constant approval.
And they know this stems from a tough early environment.
Exactly. What do they do? Are they permanently stuck with a rusted medicine cabinet and a broken map? Is this a life sentence?
Decades ago, early attachment theorists like John Bowlby believed that these working models, once formed in the first few years of life, were essentially rigid and unchangeable.
So the outlook used to be pretty grim.
It was very grim.
Yeah.
But modern psychology, combined with our newfound understanding of neuroplasticity, has introduced what I consider to be the most hopeful, empowering concept in all of relationship science.
Which is?
You are never doomed. The brain is not static. Security can be earned.
Earned security. Even just saying the phrase out loud feels empowering.
It does.
It implies that security isn't just something you are lucky enough to be born with. It is an active state that requires work, effort, and reward. Let's dig into the 2023 research by Jotzak, which specifically studies this phenomenon.
Jotzak investigated a specific cohort of adults, individuals who experienced highly inadequate, inconsistent, or even severely traumatic caregiving in their childhoods.
Okay.
Based on early attachment theory, these individuals should be destined for a lifetime of severe insecure attachment.
But that's not what happened.
No. As adults, they exhibit a completely secure attachment style.
Wait, really?
Yes. They score identically on psychological assessments to people who had wonderful, attentive childhoods.
They didn't just figure out a few cognitive behavioral tricks to hide their anxiety. They actually changed the system.
Jotzak uses the phrase profound internal reorganization. That is the key mechanism.
They completely rebuilt the house.
They literally rewired the software, which in turn rebuilt the neural pathways. An individual with earned security operates in relationships with the exact same trust, the same capacity for emotional regulation, and the same mu-opioid receptor benefits as someone with continuous secure attachment.
So their physiological stress responses are normalized.
The tripwire has been dismantled.
Okay, we absolutely need to know how to do this. How do we dismantle the tripwire?
The Jotzak research points to one primary psychological mechanism to achieve earned security.
Which is?
Mentalization.
Let's define this clearly and deeply.
Mentalization is the active cognitive capacity to process, regulate, and understand your own emotional reality, as well as the emotional reality of others.
Okay.
It is the ability to coherently make sense of past trauma without being completely overwhelmed by it. In the heat of a stressful moment, mentalization is the ability to step outside of your immediate emotional reaction,
To observe it.
to observe your own mind functioning, and recognize that your feelings, while intense, are mental states, not absolute objective facts.
I want to translate this into highly practical mechanics for our listeners. Let's use an analogy.
Go for it.
Mentalization is essentially running an advanced antivirus diagnostic program on your own brain while it is operating.
Oh, I like that.
So when a threat occurs, like the unanswered text message, your childhood algorithm, the corrupted file, starts to execute.
Right, the program starts running.
It tries to open the program that says initiate panic sequence, flood body with cortisol.
Exactly.
Mentalization is the antivirus software stepping in, isolating that corrupted file, analyzing what it is trying to do, and choosing to quarantine it rather than letting it execute its automatic script.
That is an exceptionally precise way to describe the cognitive process.
Yeah.
You are using the prefrontal cortex, the logical, analytical part of the brain, to intervene and inhibit the automatic fear signals firing from the amygdala.
So how do we install and run this antivirus software every day? Actionable step 1 for mentalization is actively challenging your if-then models.
Yes.
Walk us through exactly what a person needs to do in the specific moment they feel triggered.
It all begins with forcing the pause.
The pause.
Remember the physiological cascade we discussed? The tight chest, the shallow breathing, the sudden urge to send 6 texts, or the sudden urge to run out of the room.
It's hard to ignore.
The absolute second you feel those physical symptoms, you must recognize them as an alarm bell. Your diathesis has been triggered.
Okay.
You cannot stop the alarm from ringing initially, but you must force a behavioral pause.
Nino.
Do not text. Do not run. Stop moving.
You just sit in the discomfort.
There, sit in it. And you ask your prefrontal cortex to open the diagnostic tool. You ask yourself, what specific narrative is my brain telling me right now?
Okay.
You externalize the feeling. You do not say, my partner is abandoning me. You say, my old if-then software is currently running a program that insists I'm being abandoned.
You separate your identity from the algorithm. You literally become the observer of your own panic.
Precisely. Once you have observed it, you actively challenge it. You demand evidence like a scientist.
How do you do that?
You ask yourself, is my partner actually abandoning me? Or is it 2:00 p.m. on a Tuesday, and they are simply in a meeting?
Have they been generally reliable over the last 3 months?
Am I reacting to the objective reality of what is happening right now, or am I reacting to a biological memory of what happened to me when I was a helpless toddler?
You forced the logic center to override the emotion center. And I imagine that doing this once doesn't magically fix everything. The magic is in the repetition, right?
The repetition is the entire mechanism of neuroplasticity. There is a foundational rule in neuroscience. Neurons that fire together wire together.
And conversely.
Neurons that no longer fire together wire apart. Every single time you force that pause, every time you choose not to send the frantic text, every time you choose to stay in the room instead of running away, you are refusing to let the old neural pathway fire.
So it begins to weaken and atrophy.
Exactly. And by engaging the prefrontal cortex to assess the situation rationally, you are forcing a new neural pathway to fire. Over time, with relentless consistency, you are physically drafting a new biological blueprint.
That requires an immense amount of self-awareness, discipline, and sheer willpower, especially when your body is dumping adrenaline into your veins telling you to fight or flee.
It's not easy.
Trying to run that antivirus software entirely alone, entirely inside your own head, sounds exhausting.
It is exhausting. But, thankfully, actionable step 2 takes some of that solitary burden away.
Oh, thank goodness.
Jessak's research highlights that earned security is rarely achieved in a vacuum. It requires the vital presence of AAFs.
Alternative attachment figures. Let's talk about them.
This is perhaps the most beautiful aspect of our neurobiology. If you did not receive secure programming from your primary childhood caregivers, the window for learning it does not close.
You don't age out of it.
No. You do not have to rely entirely on a romantic partner to fix it, and you certainly don't have to white-knuckle it alone.
Yeah.
You build earned security by heavily investing in relationships with alternative attachment figures.
So practically speaking, who qualifies as an alternative attachment figure?
An AAF is anyone who consistently provides a reliable, emotionally supportive, and secure connection over a sustained period of time.
So it could be a deeply trusted, long-term platonic friend.
Yes. It could be a mentor, a teacher, a spiritual leader, or a coach. And very frequently in the clinical literature, it is an evidence-based psychotherapist.
How does the presence of an AAF physically change the brain's algorithms?
By providing a new data set that contradicts the old algorithm. The therapeutic relationship, for example, is often the most profound laboratory for achieving earned security.
A laboratory for connection.
Yes. A highly skilled therapist acts as what we call a secure base. In therapy, you can test your old if-then models in real time.
So you can get angry at the therapist.
You can pull away and deactivate.
Uh-huh.
You can express deep, anxious neediness.
You throw all your old corrupted code right at them.
Exactly. And unlike your early caregivers or an insecure romantic partner, the therapist remains completely consistent, non-judgmental, and emotionally present.
They do not abandon you when you are needy, and they do not punish you when you pull away.
Through the repeated long-term experience of this safe relationship, your brain is forced to reckon with new evidence. Your amygdala eventually learns that vulnerability does not equal danger.
It learns that conflict does not equal abandonment.
The relationship with the AAF literally supplies the missing code to rewrite the operating system.
And as you mentioned, it doesn't strictly have to be a clinical therapist. A
Okay.
deeply emotionally supportive friendship can provide that exact same new data set over time, right?
Absolutely.
A friend who consistently shows up, listens without judgment, and remains steady when you are anxious is helping you build new neural pathways.
Absolutely. We heal in connection. If you place yourself in a secure relational environment, whether that is therapy, strong friendships, or a secure romantic partnership, and you actively do the mentalization work to pause and process your triggers.
Your brain will physically and psychologically adapt.
Yes, it will.
So, mapping out this entire journey, we have essentially laid out an instruction manual for the human attachment system.
We covered a lot of ground today.
We really did. We started by understanding that the deep panic or the strong urge to flee we feel in relationships isn't just a modern emotional failing.
It is an ancient survival mechanism, an algorithm written by evolutionary pressure to keep vulnerable infants alive.
We then followed that algorithm into the adult brain, detailing the neurobiology of connection. We explored how secure attachment physically manifests as a high density of mu-opioid receptors.
Creating an internal pharmacy that releases endogenous painkillers, giving securely attached individuals a biological shield of social euphoria and resilience.
We looked at the dark side of that biology, too, the diathesis of insecure attachment.
Tracing the exact physiological cascade of what happens when your tripwire is crossed.
Whether you hyperactivate and cling or deactivate and run, your brain triggers the HPA axis, flooding your system with cortisol and adrenaline.
Suppressing your immune system and causing measurable physical damage.
We also examined how the software runs when we are single. We saw that an anxious need for external validation turns single life into a state of chronic threat.
While a core algorithm of secure confidence allows individuals to thrive beautifully and independently.
And finally, we arrived at the blueprint for change, the reality of earned security. We broke down the daily mechanics of mentalization.
Force the pause. Run the cognitive antivirus software to challenge your automatic assumptions.
And actively cultivate relationships with alternative attachment figures to provide the new data your brain needs to rewrite its code.
The ultimate takeaway is that understanding your attachment style is not just a tool for having fewer arguments on a Friday night.
No, it's so much bigger than that.
It is a biological imperative. It is about fundamentally altering your brain chemistry, protecting your cardiovascular and immune systems from chronic stress, and consciously redrawing the map you use to navigate human connection.
You literally have the power to update the software. And as we wrap up, looking at the sheer biological power of these systems, I want to leave you with a final thought to just kind of mull over on your own time.
Okay, let's hear it.
We spent a lot of time discussing how secure attachment physically acts as an endogenous painkiller, right? Flooding the brain's receptors to create a shield against distress and fear. When you look at the landscape of modern society, we are currently facing an unprecedented, widespread epidemic of chronic emotional pain, loneliness, and isolation. Rates of anxiety and depression are soaring.
It's true.
It forces you to wonder, is our current societal mental health crisis really just a massive collective crisis of insecure attachment? Have we built a modern world fueled by algorithmic isolation, transient relationships, and digital distance that constantly triggers our biological tripwires while starving us of the deep proximity we evolved to need?
That is a profound question.
And if that is true, perhaps the ultimate medicine for this modern epidemic isn't something we can synthesize in a lab or prescribe in a pill. Perhaps the only real cure is found in the hard, courageous, messy work of earning our security with each other.